everybody, welcome. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. Today on Dat Fury Radio, Mr. Furious 20th Anniversary Celebration Part 6 with Rob and Cory. What's going on, Rob?
What is shaking, H-Dog and Kibbles? Good to be back.
Kibbles is in the light tonight. You're usually in the dungeon office.
It's like the opposite of when you're an anonymous source on 60 Minutes. Like, I wanted you guys to see every pore.
You're a public source.
Yeah.
You're a known source.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are picking up where we left off, and that will be in 2017, covering the songs from the Mr. Furious compilation, Mr. Signal, from 2017 into the very early pandemic 2020 material. So this is actually getting into some stuff that feels... 2017 doesn't feel current or modern, but 2020 kind of does in a way.
In that weird suspension of time.
It's a very weird time, but it feels noticeably closer than 2017.
Indeed.
So we're going to kick things off with me and Cory, 2017's So Far to Go from the first Cool Drugs EP. And Cory, once we hear a little bit of the music, I want to ask you like what you remember about making this.
I see your mark. He looks an excellent man, sleeve on his heart, excellent knife in his hand. You wanna roll? You still got a lot to learn. Times I had it all. I was the ace of this crew. We run this town, keeping ahead of the blue left.
Yeah, we did this in the very room I'm sitting in, which is my laundry room.
This was a special trip to Lawrence from Denver. Howie was like, if we're going to work on some music together, why not just fly out? And so I flew out to KCI, and I drank like 15 LaCroix, and we banged out 4 or 5 songs pretty quickly. Like, we got it done.
I had forgotten the LaCroix, but now I remember.
Yeah. So, if folks don't know, and they probably don't, the whole idea behind Cool Drugs was that we would each bring a song or two fully fleshed out, and then we would each write the music and then have the other person finish it with lyrics and melody and stuff. So this was a total Howie song, but I did do the lead guitar and some extra rhythm during the choruses and stuff.
What was what's that guitar tone?
I don't know.
Just really rowdy, kind of slitty.
2017, man. There's definitely... So I do play one lead, and it's the one with the octaves, which I think is like a pitchfork octave into distortion. So this harmonized lead is you. And then this riff is me. Yeah. But like, one of the things I remember about Cool Drugs is that I wanted to engage you in some low stakes music making, because I was feeling like you were maybe kind of getting wrapped around your own axle in terms of writing and recording and being productive. So the intention here was very much to be low stakes, work fast, guided by voices type of vibes where like fragments are okay and there's no pressure to put a full rock band together or have a complete arrangement even or anything like that. Like,
yeah, it was good. It was the perfect system because Howie is slowly like, I'm going to say crate trained. No, he's slowly like we've both met in the middle as far as like working on stuff, because he's very like ambitious, which is awesome. I am like very agreeable. So it's like I just need someone in my orbit to say like, hey, we should do this. And when they do, I get it done. And it's great. I have to have like deadlines and assignments kind of. But it was great because the idea was come out here, we'll have a batch of songs. We'll do what we can. If we get them all done, great. If we get 2 done, that's okay too. It's just a hang. But it works out. Whenever it's presented like that, I'm much more productive than if it's like we need to get 8 songs done in a weekend or whatever.
Yeah, and we've gotten much better about. We'll like communicate very openly and clearly at the outset, like what are the expectations and what are the parameters, and for each project differently. So like if you're guesting on a Fight Songs, that's one thing. If we're doing a Cool Drugs, that's a different thing, and we just have very open communication about all of that. This song, Big Whatever, jumps forward over a year. So Mr. Furious did not have a release in 2018. Multiple reasons for that, mainly because I was like super head down on Howie and Scott's V for Voice. And Scott was coming down, and like I was anytime I could grab Scott, you know, for a couple days, he would come down, and I think some Mars Lights stuff maybe was going on then too. Or Dark Satellites was playing shows, like quite a few shows.
So this is you out in Denver, right?
Yeah, so we did the same Cool Drugs thing again out in Denver in 2019. And here comes the motorcycle.
Listening to me play ukulele, Mom? Get the dick out of my room!
I think that was pretty good. And there's this
Motorcycle?
Yeah, the ripping motorcycle.
Like Steve's in the Night? What's that reference about?
For some reason, it's a running Cool Drugs joke to take a well-known album title, in this case, In Excess, and do a rhyme with Steve's.
Yeah,
simple as that.
It's pretty good. Yeah, that was so. The song you just heard was tracked at the end of 2018 because that's when my wife went into labor that same weekend.
Oh,
so
goodness.
that same, like the next night, we went to Watercourse and had some buffalo cauliflower wings, and then Laura's water broke, and I was like, bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird weekend. Howie was very gracious about that, but it was crazy.
It was a good weekend, but I recognized that the music was done at that point.
Yeah, it was. We were done tracking.
When Gabriel speaks,
I was done scratching up Laura's floor with my drum kit.
Yeah, no, she loved it. So this
it's
is
a big
really,
one here.
I love the arc of Howie and Scott, and I really love the earlier albums or whatever, but I remember when V for Voice came out, I was amped. I was a big Howie and Scott stan. This whole album was
Same.
like everything I loved about Howie and Scott, but like taken to another level and so fully realized. I wore this one out. This song specifically I love, but all of them, I love the whole record a great deal.
I remember when Howie gave me the copy, he gave me a physical CD, and my car did not have a CD player, and I was driving all the way back to New York, and so I couldn't listen to the record the entire drive home.
Yeah.
And I was just furious. I was like,
staring at the reflection, trying to read the bits out of the...
I honestly, like, I stopped by a Best Buy and I was like, hey man, do you have because I had an auxiliary in, I'm like, do you have a Discman? And the 20-year-old looked at me like I was an alien.
What?
a Discman? like, and then I'm like walking away and I hear them talking about it and they're like, why was it gendered? I was like, oh God, I'm old.
I think Discman was the last name of the guy who invented it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Old Fred Discman.
Leonard Discman, yeah.
Yeah.
So this was recorded in Lawrence?
Yeah, I did the drums at the library. The library has a studio that you can check out.
Right.
So real drums on the library's drum kit at the library. I did the drums in 2 different sessions, like 6 or 7 songs each. I got this. You can get like if you save up your time, you can get a 7-hour block.
Hell yeah.
And so I practiced at Drew's, and I checked out the library studio for 7 hours, and I like kind of had my mics planned out, and I would set up mics and get a sound for about an hour, and then just play each song like 8 or 10 times, and the drum takes are comped, obviously, but
yeah,
got what I needed. Yeah, this is a big one. This came out better than I could have hoped and this was like 5 years in the making, but the idea was to like make good on the original promise of Howie and Scott, and like all the things we could imagine but couldn't pull off in 2004.
And was that the Delta 2004 to 2019?
Basically, I mean, Signs.com was recorded in the summer of 2002. And then we had done a couple little live things, but we hadn't worked seriously on music since the summer of 2002. I mean, there were shows, some shows for Signs.com and but yeah, we hadn't written. Somewhere I saved the email where I first pitched Scott on like a reunion album. It might be on the website. If it is, I'll link to it, or maybe I'll post it if I can find it.
I'm so glad you guys did that. Like, it came out.
And we're not done. I talked to him just the other day.
Really?
Yeah, we had a good conversation. Whatever we do next, and there's multiple options, we'll probably do something smaller in scope.
What does a small Howie and Scott record even look like?
Well, we're gonna find out. And one of the ideas is to write together, which we've hardly done. Like, I have written and then written sections for Scott to take a solo, and I've asked his opinion and stuff, but like for the most part I've written songs alone with Scott in mind and woven him in, but we're interested in actually writing and developing raw material together in a more collaborative way.
That sounds rad. I would like to hear what that sounds like, and it sounds like I will. And also, when you are writing a Howie and Scott song, do you know it's a Howie and Scott song?
Yes-ish. Weird chords. Certainly, there's a lyrical mode I get into.
I was wondering about that.
That's where the big words go.
Yeah.
Howie and Scott is where the big words go.
It's like brainy, kind of not exactly wholesome, but it makes me feel wholesome listening to it, if that makes sense. Like, but it's funny because the lyrics can often be pretty dark, but I feel uplifted. And V for Voice came out at the right time.
Yeah, it's pretty earnest. I mean, it's very there's a lot of we can do this. There's some this hurts while we're doing it, but there's a
lot of PMA.
Yes. That's positive mental attitude for listeners who don't know.
Is this the second Night Mode record?
This is the third Night Mode record, and it's the one with Damon Marr. So Damon Marr and Drew and I worked up a couple of live sets, semi-improvised, semi-structured. I think we recorded these versions before we actually performed them live, so this was like part of the writing and getting a set ready process. But 4 long pieces came out of that. 3 went on an album, and then 1 went on an EP with a significantly different alternate take of one of the album pieces. So this is Vactrolysis off of... What is it off of? Off of Load Exceedance, sorry. Off of Load Exceedance.
And then Transcendence was like the outtakes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I remember hearing this and being like, I think this is what Howie is going to end up doing for a long time.
Say more about that, because you were right, but I didn't know it at the time.
No, I was just like, it felt like I was hearing an artist that I knew intimately find a new expression, and knowing you as I do, I suspected that you were going to do a lot of expression in this medium and do a lot of exploration. And I think that ended up bearing out to be true, but I knew immediately after I heard this, I was like, wow, this is going to be like a thing that you focus on for a bit. Which coming, on the heels of, what had been your recording career's like beginning, it felt like a very pivotal, like I want to say it was fall. It was also like the turning of a season as well when it came out. So how did the production of Night Mode and V for Voices line up against each other?
I'd have to dig around to kind of lay out a timeline. I mean, V for Voice was a very long production process. If it came out in 2019, we seriously worked on it for 4 or 5 years, I think. Night Mode was much, much faster. I mean, as we've talked about, Drew made the first record almost in secret, kind of. Not out of any intention, but just he was picking away at it in the basement and he was inventing the thing, And then I made mine pretty quick, inspired by his, and Damon, so Damon's a friend. Drew knows Damon from work, like way back, 15 years or something. Damon, longtime Lawrence-based musician, a lot of synth stuff. I mean, introduced us to modular, built his own modular system, DIY'd it, his own format. And I think it might have gone, we wanted to play shows, and wanting to play shows, it was only natural to invite Damon to be a part of it. And so I think the trio was put together specifically for live performance. And the first meetup was at Damon's house, and we each just brought some gear. I mean, Drew had the mini brute that you hear doing the main, I think, arpeggio in this piece, along with a pile of pedals and a guitar to DI, so no amp, but effects. And my rig was my rig from my Night Mode record, so my Micron and an iPad and a Volca bass. And then Damon had tons of gear, and I don't remember what he ended up playing for this, but he had lots of options, from polysynths to modular stuff to experimental instruments. And yeah, I mostly hear Drew in this track. Both, that arpeggio is the mini brute. The swells at the beginning is Drew like tremolo picking guitar chords.
So is Damon's house just jam-packed with synths?
He had a room. So at the time, we were all younger. He had like 2 or 3 roommates. They had a house just outside of town.
Okay.
They built like skate ramps and stuff around the house, but he had like a music room.
Okay.
He's moved around and he's a doctor now, and I actually just talked to Damon a couple weeks ago too. Had a really good conversation with him. In fact, we talked about we want to do this again out at Drew's now, but he was like, yeah, I don't want to prepare or write. I just want to show up and plug in and see what happens. But yeah, going back to Rob's kind of comments, like, you both know I love Beginner's Mind. And Night Mode and synthesizers just opened up this whole new world where I could be in that sweet spot of Beginner's Mind, but also a lot of my training and experience was still kind of relevant. Just, having a scale and thinking about what chords might go within it and stuff like that, but at the same time having this whole new world to experiment with, and trying a sequencer and trying an arpeggiator and designing a sound and really thinking about timbre in a way that's different from guitar or voice or whatever. Super fun to just get lost in. And we got lost.
Yep. I was going to say, I feel like I had, since I didn't do any synth or Night Mode stuff, I wasn't really there for that process, but it was really cool to be on the journey with you to a certain extent on the 404 process. So like you got the 404 going, and that was another thing where you dove in and all that stuff. But it was cool to be able to work on some stuff with you and see how that evolved, like, doing versus.
So we talked over another Night Mode song, an excerpt from Dub C, which was taken from a set that Drew and I wrote and performed and recorded. And because the Night Mode pieces tend to be long, I have gone... After a few of them, I realized they were taking over the runtime of Mr. Signal. So I've gone back and going forward, I've tried to do this. I try and find a 4 to 5 minute excerpt to give the flavor that basically stands on its own, but doesn't... I want to keep it moving for the compilation.
Yeah. Totally. Yep. I get it.
This is one where I couldn't. So this is Clause You'll See from one of my favorite albums I have ever put out of any kind, period. It's probably it's a top 5. It might be a top 3. And that is Your Pain Matters. 4 solo Night Mode pieces. And the title, real heads will know, is an obvious reference to Klaus Schulze, famous German Kosmisch musician who works in this style. Particularly this intro is like very Klaus Schulze.
So across these 3 records, how did your composition process change?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember writing the pieces necessarily. A lot of times night mode pieces start with kind of a... I think I've talked about this elsewhere, but start with kind of a prompt that can be a gear prompt or a musical prompt or both together, but it can just be as simple as using one particular synth feature. Like, oh, I'm gonna take the MS-20 synthesizer and I'm gonna use the ring mod feature. And so I'll just start there and improvise until something emerges, and then I'll work with that, and that becomes the piece. So I have no memory of writing this particular piece. I have no idea. I do remember recording it. This sound, it's the Micron. It's one patch on the Micron. I was doing the accompaniment and the lead at the same time with a split keyboard. I know we'll get in later in the song when it builds Scotty's Rhodes, which I had on long-term loan. I was pounding out notes on the Rhodes, and I remember doing that, but I don't remember. There's the Rhodes. I don't remember writing it. I love this lead playing. I didn't know I had this in me. You know,
it does sound German. There's a composer. I'm gonna look him up while I'm thinking about it. But it reminds me a lot of this, like the sounds. He might have used the same synthesizers. I'm gonna find it out. You'll see.
What were these shows like?
Very sparsely attended.
So basically like all our shows.
Yeah. But not in bars. Like we played at the record store a couple times. We played in art spaces, you know, and like galleries, and Drew's doing some shows like at the Replay and stuff now, but this was all kind of alternative art venues. Which I liked. I wouldn't want to try and entertain a beer drinking crowd down at the Replay with this stuff.
I would like to see that. Might go over better than you think it will. So I looked up the guy. He's not German. He's Canadian. His name is Mort Garson.
Oh, I love Mort Garson.
Yeah, so he's great. I found out about him because a podcast I listened to called The Adventure Zone used his composition Deja Vu as the theme song, and I heard it and flipped my wig. I couldn't believe how awesome it was. So I got into the rest of his stuff, but his sounds, the sounds that he uses on a lot of the tracks, sound very similar to this.
Yeah, he's a fascinating artist with a fascinating story, and they gave out. He made that album about plants, and they would give it out if you bought a mattress.
Thanks, Mort.
And he did a bunch of I think movie work and commercials and stuff. Yeah, I'll link to his Wikipedia. Fascinating guy.
So if you Google Mort Garson, some of the other most popular search phrases are, is Plantasia really for plants? And was Mort Garson a cultist? So
I think the answer is no on that, but
I think it's no. I'm pretty sure it's new. It's funny too. So he looks like he went to Juilliard. Son of Russian Jewish immigrants in New Jersey, but he looks he looks how you think he might look. That's
Totally.
the best way I can put it.
Plantasia, I'll link to it. Plantasia is a great listen. It's very approachable. If you're interested in dipping your toe in this type of music and haven't really listened to it much before, Plantasia is a great one.
Yeah. A lot of his songs have it's like standard song structure in that there's like choruses and verses and stuff like that, at least the stuff I've heard.
He made a lot of different types of music. It wasn't all synthesizer stuff. He was in bands and did all kinds of things.
Can you talk a little bit about the time in which this was released? Obviously, this is somewhere in 2020.
Yeah, so... All right, so the previous song, the Dub C, I mean, Drew and I had composed and performed that set like in February 2020, maybe, like when there's kind of... we were reading things in the news, and I mean, there was no like official action being taken in this area yet, at least, but like you could start to, like, if things were weird and being out in public was kind of weird, and we were still doing it, but you could start to it started to feel strange. And then, of course, you know, March 2020 and COVID and stay-at-home orders and things, and I'd have to pull up the dates, but I remember it as, like, when the stay-at-home orders started, I reached out to a lot of different people to start collaborations to, like, keep friends busy and, like, have something to look forward to, something to work on while we're at home. And we'll start to get into the results of that. I think this was already recorded, but it took till later in the year for me to get itchy to kind of bother Drew, like, hey, like, I don't know when shows are coming back or anything. Do you mind if I just start putting out some of my night mode backlog? Because we had originally, I don't think Drew or Damon ever cared about this originally, but like, because I was making so much music all of a sudden, night mode music, I wasn't trying to take over. Like, Drew originated the thing, and I wasn't meaning to take it over. So I was thinking, okay, we'll go in a circle, and it'll be like a Drew, and then a Howie, and then a collaboration. And that will be like the cycle. But as summer 2020 went on, I didn't want to put pressure on Drew to do a solo one if he wasn't ready. We didn't really know when collaboration would be happening again in terms of the live, like, working it all out together. That is the fun part of the night mode, like, duo or trio format. So at some point I just asked him, I was like, hey, do you mind if we break the cycle and I can kind of clear out some of my backlog? And of course he said okay. I'll look up quick when this specifically... All right, so the Capsule live set, we performed the live set February 16, 2020. I don't remember if we made the studio version either right before or right after that. And then it happened a lot quicker. This is a lot quicker than I remembered it, but Your Pain Matters was put out in June.
Rob, did you work on music during COVID?
I did not. I worked on a comedy piece that I didn't end up releasing. It was intended to be a web series about a Russian troll farm, and I had filmed the first 3 episodes, and then Ukraine happened. And
no!
I was like, oh wait, this is not funny anymore at all.
Was it fun to work on?
It was fun to work on. I can't imagine a world in which I'll be able to ever release it, but it was super funny. It was very, inspired by the time. There were a couple Russian characters that, like bet each other that they can make Americans eat horse paste and stuff like that. So it was very funny. But tragically, I did not strike while the iron was remotely hot until it was too hot to touch.
Yeah.
Also, I would say most of until well into the fall of 2020, I was recovering from my own bout of COVID. I got sick in the first wave in New York. And so it was a bit of a long haul. I wasn't able to exercise until like well into August at that point.
Oh, wow. So you got the long COVID. Like, what kind of symptoms were sticking around for you?
It wasn't long COVID. And I'm fine now. The only thing that has persisted is that flowers smell like cat pee. And that's just the way it's going to be forever. But I did struggle with shortness of breath for a while. And I had been running quite a bit. I was doing 80 miles a week at the time. So I was in pretty good cardiovascular health before I got sick. And I had a pretty aggressive running regimen, but I wasn't able to. I remember when I ran a mile in August, I was just like overjoyed. I was like, I couldn't get over it. And I was doing like 80 miles a week before then. So it was pretty gnarly. As far as I know, no lasting impact. And so this is orbital debris, right?
Yeah, so this is, in a funny way, this is kind of why we're here. This is my collaboration with Nate. Album's called Orbital Debris. This song's called Reclaim Action. I knew Nate mostly on Twitter. I had met him once in real life at a Approach and Astrale's show at the Replay. And I introduced myself. We had been Twitter friends. I went to the show. I introduced myself. Carrie Ann and I ended up sitting with him and Amber for like half an hour after the show, hanging out, and we really hit it off. And so Nate was in that first wave of stay-at-home emails I sent, like, hey, do you want to work on music together while we're all stuck at home? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I've got kind of B-sides and like stuff I never finished, and let me send you some of that and just like see, maybe we can finish some of this stuff off. And I was really into what he was sending me, and so I made a little rule for myself. When I would overdub on a piece of his, I would record a new jam with the same gear I used for the overdub and send that back to him. So it had a kind of cohesiveness, like every piece of gear I used shows up at least twice to kind of bring the album together. But yeah, so we did the music, and come fall, there still weren't shows or anything, so it's like, how are we going to promote this? I've told all this on the full episode of, like, probably the literal first episode of the Long Play Listening Party. We, like, invented the Long Play Listening Party as a one-off YouTube recording. And then Daniel, I forget if Drew or Daniel was second, but one of them, and then the other was like, hey, can we do the listening party thing for my album? And we're like, sure. Nate's the one who brought Royce in. just as he had worked with Royce. He works with Royce a lot, but that's how I met Royce. And after the third one, Nate and Royce and I kind of looked at each other and were like, this feels like something. Is this something? Should we do something with this? And that became the Long Play Listening Party, which kind of with their blessing became Dat Fury Radio.
I love the chiptune kind of sound here. I mean, I know it's not chiptune, but
yeah, I'm pretty sure this is my Dreadbox Medusa, which has some really cool FM functionality. So I think that's what this is.
It's totally got chiptune vibes. I'm a sucker for chiptune. It's so rad. Like, it's good, and also the era of time when it was sincerely popular was so specific. So, like, hearing the theme to Maniac Mansion on Nintendo is like such a delight for me.
Yeah. I remember the only thing you couldn't get rid of in your inventory in Maniac Mansion for the NES was your CD player.
That's awesome. I love that game. I stayed up all night one time trying to beat that game, and we finally did it. We had to use a Nintendo Power.
Oh, of course.
To do it.
There was no way you could do that without help.
No.
There's no chance.
Yeah. It was an impossible game. It was a pretty weird, looking back, it's crazy that it was as mainstream as it was, or that they even were able to make it, because it is it's a bizarre, it's got some like David Lynch vibes in it. It's a strange one. But the music slayed. It was so good.
I feel like that was like right at the pinnacle of LucasArts. Just like crushing it.
Yeah. There was a video game we rented. And then we bought it later because I loved it so much. But we rented it, stayed up all night, drank a lot of caffeine-free Diet Pepsi. Because I probably had a pretty tough childhood. Anyway, it was good.
Oh man, that gold can.
Yep, the gold can, man. That's how you knew it was a party, and that you were able to get to sleep on time if you needed to. Delicious.
I want to shout out Nate a little more on that song. I think I sent him that sequence, and I love that sequence.
Was he responsible for the beat?
He did the beat, so the drums and everything.
Cool.
I think I sent him probably just the raw sequence. Nate really turned that into a track.
It rips, man. That thing
I do one little trick in that sequence. It uses a bebop scale with both the major and minor third, which is what I feel like gives it kind of you can listen to it for 6 minutes without it getting boring, because there's both major and minor within the sequence. In fact, that's probably a perfect illustration. I'm reconstructing this, but there's a good chance that was my prompt for that piece. Was I probably read about the bebop scale and challenged myself, make a sequence with the bebop scale. And it turned into Reclaim Action.
I got in trouble for reading about the bebop scale at work. It was pretty spicy. I liked it. That's cool. I learned something new today. There's a bebop scale.
There's a bebop. That's what it's called. I mean, obviously not all bebop uses it, and it's not exclusive to bebop, but... Yeah, so here's Drew's Stay at Home album. Absolutely mind-blowing. I'm this album's biggest fan.
Super duper 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 good. It's awesome.
He pushed so far beyond what I realized Dark Satellites could be.
Yeah,
and he just sent this to me one day. He had been in the lab, not sharing, and all of he'd been cooking, and all of a sudden this is in my inbox. Hey, what do you think of these mixes?
It's pretty amazing. That's I love the bends, and then there's OK Computer or whatever. Like, he takes a huge step in, like, maturity, I guess, evolution.
Also, it sounded like I felt in the fall of 2020. Like, it was very timely.
Really captured the moment.
And I actually thought about this. I listened to this record like 3 weeks ago because Ross Douthat from the New York Times opinion section launched a new podcast called Interesting Times, and I'm like, I am not going to listen to Ross Douthat for any length of time whatsoever. However, this is a good excuse to revisit some Dark Satellites.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drew and Ross are on the opposite ends of the Interesting Times spectrum.
They're on the opposite ends of everything. Good and bad, good and evil.
That it's kind of buried in the mix, but there's this crazy choir synth. Oh ha, oh ha, oh ha. That's so creepy.
Yeah, I love it.
Every Dark Satellites album is my favorite Dark Satellites album, but this is my favorite Dark Satellites album.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Along with every other one, is what I'm saying.
Along with every other one.
Scott and I got in on the split screen home video game. But this turned out really nice. I'm so glad we did this.
Breathing in Sukhasana, you felt the trouble trickle up in trust.
I really appreciate you guys doing thanks for visiting me on the radio on this record.
That came out really good. This whole EP. Actually, just listened to it the other. Cory and I even talked. I think it was just Monday, maybe.
Yep, we listened to it.
We listened to it, and I had come. Why did I? You know, this is such a full circle. Rob, I was doing my quality control listen of one of our conversations from a couple weeks ago, talking about my guitar solos, and you had mentioned Blues or Astro Blue as an example. And I pulled up this version of Blues or Astro Blue to listen to, and I ended up listening to the whole EP, and about a song and a half in, actually realized that, and this is a good thing, but I realized I had not listened to this since I was playing it for Mom on her last day.
Oh God, wow.
But I'm thankful because it came back up organically, like without me putting that weight on the first re-listen.
Yeah.
And so that was actually perfect for me and let me both listen to it and come back to that memory without completely losing it.
That's awesome, man.
In case no one else read the emails that I sent to you the other day about this EP, I love the way the guitar sounds on this. I mean, it all sounds very good, but I feel like there's so many ways, because I'm assuming you just mic'd the guitar, right?
Yeah, so I recorded this in this room. 3 of the songs I did vocals and guitar at the same time. It's one mic and one performance. The other 3 I did I did one guitar and then one vocal separately. But particularly it's this little mic called the Little Blondie. It's an omnidirectional condenser mic. Affordable and just fantastic at capturing a really natural sound. And this Beams is one where it's the guitar and my voice is just me sitting against the red couch that's behind this curtain.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the floor with that mic about 2 feet in front of me, just playing like I would in the corner at a party, you know?
Yeah.
And this is the best representation of like what my voice sounds like to me in my head. This really captures what I sound like to myself, and I love it for that reason. Most of the time when I hear my voice recorded, there's like 10% Kermit the Frog in there compared to how it sounds inside my skull.
Yeah.
But this lacks that, and I love it for that.
In my head when I talk, there's like a nice baritone timbre to my voice. And me having sung baritone parts in choir doesn't mean that it actually sounds like that. Like I have a gentle.
Yeah, I hate to tell you, bud. I don't think there's a baritone element.
It's like no. Right, there's no resonance in real life. In my head, I'm like, dang, you sound great, Cory.
Well, I think you do sound great.
You do sound great.
I would not describe it as baritone, no.
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
There is that. I'm gonna enter a small amount of evidence in your favor, though. The voice you used on Digital Sin.
Oh yeah.
That lower, breathier. You pulled it back. You didn't project. It's very close mic'd. That was something different and very cool and kind of heavy.
That was a really, really fun song to do, and I was so amped to hear it. Like because obviously I heard the music, but then you got you like finalized Scott's like saxophone stuff in there, I think, and then the way you chopped up the vocal sounds so badass. Like you have a really good sense of hip hop vocals in a song like with that, and then Hellfire. Just again the way you chopped it up and separated it, it works out so perfectly. Like you got some loop some words and repeat them and things like that, and it sounds pretty badass.
Hellfire's unreleased, I think. You got to finish Florida Man Life for me.
Yep, I know. We got something coming for you. And then, yeah.
And wait, I want to say those horns on Digital Sin. I chopped up Scott's sax from the Goldfinger cover, the secret track.
Oh my god.
That's his Miles Away saxophones.
And this is Nate on the beat again?
Yeah, this is a song on Nate's. So Hideout Forever was a song that Nate had pretty complete, actually. The record version, I think all I did was take out his bass line and play the same thing with a little bit of decoration on the MS-20 for just like a fatter, more distorted, gently distorted bass. But a funny thing, do you ever have this experience where a song starts and you're hearing it in one, like you're hearing a downbeat in your head, and then when the downbeat actually comes in, it's in a different place, and you get like this moment of auditory vertigo?
Totally, absolutely. That happens to all especially when a song starts halfway through a count or something like that. I'm like, where does it start? Anyway.
So that happened to me hardcore with this song. And I loved both versions so much, I had to make like a separate B-side version with the So this is the way I heard it initially. Like the drums are like shifted a beat and a half or something. Maybe not for the whole thing, but for a long section. But yeah, the mix is not that different. I added another part to just make it a little more different, but then I shifted those drums so that there would be a sort of official version that matched the unofficial way that I initially heard the drums.
The vibe on this song is one of my favorite vibes. I think we talked about this through email, but like the outrun genre of music. So like I think it was a video game called Outrun. It was a racing video game.
Yep.
And the music for it is fantastic, but it's weird because I didn't realize until just a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, just how much that style of music had infiltrated my like memory of childhood or something like that. And so I can listen to that kind of music for hours and hours and hours, like working out, whatever it is. And this doesn't sound like that, but it's got the same, I don't know, Blade Runner fight, you know what I mean? Like, it's
I feel what you're saying. There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like its own thing.
Yeah, still even my mix is still very much, this is Nate's composition. He really gets the credit for the vibe and all the cool stuff about it.
He's got a good handle on sounds.
Indeed. We have to wrap this up quick. I know we're near the maximum time I can post on a podcast, so quick. Cory, anything to plug? Any links? Instagram?
Nothing to plug. Just that I'll have some music to share at some point from my friend Mike Papani and I, Van Ripper and Galactic Fader, and Howie and I. In a few months, we'll be doing a whole podcast about the song Cheap Ass Rolls. It's gonna be dope. You'll see. Yeah.
Maybe in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
Rob, anything to plug?
You can find me at brooklynhacker.com, but you should go to the Dat Fury Radio YouTube page, like, comment, and subscribe.
Appreciate it. Listeners, we'll catch you next time. Guys, don't go anywhere. It's been Dat Fury Radio.
See ya!